Hello Internet. We've got a very intriguing one to have a look at today. I've not seen it before, but I've never known a movie to have such a divisive reaction to it. Some reactions I've read have run along the lines of it's not a film, it doesn't have a story, it's just an effects show reel for someone, all the way through to that it's a very involving character study, that it works on the level of metaphor and tells a very powerful story. The movie is, he said, attempting to pronounce this, Thanatomorphose. A Cronenbergian smorgasbord of rancid flesh and sexual gratification, Thanatomorphose is a modern-day body horror that picks up where Necromantic left off. Discovering several bruises on her body after a night of rough sex, a young woman is shocked as, rather than heal itself, her body begins rotting around her. We'll leave it there. I'm going to watch the film. I'm very eager to see it, to see whether it is a powerful work with something to say, or whether it's just a hollow tub making a noise as it's thumped. Join me after the cut, where I will give you my honest and heartfelt opinion about this film and whether it's worth your time. Well, I watched the film last night. I'm just back from work this evening, and I can certainly see why it's proved to be so divisive amongst viewers. I'm going to take the dog for a walk in a minute. There he is. Before I do, I'm just going to set down reasons why I think you might hate this film, and then when I get back, I'm going to lay out my reasons why I think you should love it. Now, it's an independent movie. It's the first movie from the writer-director. I'm going to grab his name after the cut off the back of the box. It's a Canadian film. So you might hate it because it's low in budget, and obviously with a first-time movie, you work with the actors that you can get. You might hate it for that reason. I read the brief summary off the back of the box about the movie. You might hate it because of the story, because essentially a woman gets a disease that causes her to rot, and that's it. And if you're going to approach this story as a tale of realism, you may well get very frustrated with it. You may well ask yourself, why don't you go and see a doctor? The entire film takes place inside her apartment, and you might be completely flabbergasted that she does absolutely nothing to help herself. I would suggest that this is the wrong reading of this movie. I can understand why people might think that. Personally, I think they're wrong. I'm going to take the dog for a walk and then grab something to eat. And when I get back, I'm going to lay out the case for this film and why I actually think it's a remarkably powerful piece of cinema that works within the constraints of a first-time writer-director, independent movie, micro-budget movie, I would imagine, and that that context makes me forgive many of its faults. I'll point out the flaws as I see them, but I'm going to do my chores, and then we're going to talk about the flick and what I thought of it. Okay, so Thanatomorphose, written and directed by Eric Faladeur. That is bound to be pronounced incorrectly. Rotting never felt this good. Prepare to rot in hell. Ignore that. Someone stuck that on the box to try and sell the DVD. Discovering several bruises on her body after a night of rough sex. Ignore that as well. That little précis there has also been designed to sell the DVD. It does begin with a sex scene. You can't make out anything. It's very highly sort of stylized and special effected If you've ever seen a sort of Slender Man YouTube video, the sort of static that appears whenever Slender Man's around, it looks like that. Yes, there's some sex at the start of it. The suggestion that she's picked up this rotting disease through the sex act, though, I think is a misdirection as well. What we do have here from All Things Horror, quote, a claustrophobic, sickening and oddly uplifting experience. That is accurate. The picture on the front of the DVD, as startling an image as it is also accurately representative of what's in the movie. And what I think this movie is a meditation on a theme. I'm tempted to use the term tone poem, but I don't want to get too up my own arse about the whole thing. It's very stripped back, it's very simple, and it takes its central premise and it explores that. Now, as I said earlier, some people will hate that. Some people will think nothing happens. Some people will think that it's too artsy. We spend our entire time in Lucy's apartment. There's huge sections of the film without dialogue. And some people are just going to have a fundamental problem with that. But the film takes its time and it lays out its stall and it builds upon it and explores it, and boy does it explore it. Now, this character, she begins to rot. Thanatomorphose, I don't know if, I'll be honest, I googled it and the only thing that came up was this film. Thanatos is a Greek god of death, and supposedly Thanatomorphose is a French word meaning the outward signs of decay on a dead body. You will see every form of human produced fluid you can imagine. Blood, yeah, sure. But what? Vomit, yes. Piss, yes. Not shit, yes. But that just leaves, well, surely not. Yes. If you're squeamish, you won't like this film at all. As I say, it's a meditation. For me, personally, I believe it's a meditation on depression. When we first meet Lucy, she's a blank canvas, which I don't think is accidental. She's an artist. She's sculpting a clay figure. It looks like a head, and as the disease takes hold, her body actually becomes the canvas for us. She spends, props to the actress, she spends an awful lot of the film naked. And we start off seeing her healthy naked form, and it deteriorates and rots, and there are maggots and there is slime and there's ooze. And as I say, she starts as a blank canvas. She's not there in a very stretched sense of the idea. She begins the movie as a zombie. It enables us, with the very little dialogue she has and the very little she actually does in the film, to project an awful lot of meaning onto her as the audience. This is a film that asks you to actively engage in it and actively ask questions about it. And if you're willing to put in that kind of work, and if you're willing to project meaning onto what you're seeing, I think there is a lot there to find. Whilst the story is very simple, and it's as simple as I've laid out, I'm not going to spoil what happens, because I think part of the experience of watching it is engaging with it yourself and getting out of it what you want to put in. There are a few instances of either dream sequences or hallucinations. It could be argued that the opening sex scene actually fits into that bracket because the way it's presented and the way the visuals are affected in post-production, it fits much more comfortably visually, tonally and aesthetically in the same brackets as the hallucinations and visions. What that potentially says about what happens at the very start of the movie is open to debate if you agree that it fits into those portions of the film. The next one is proven to be a hallucination. It doesn't happen and she's in the waking state. I would also argue that that leaves the door open to a hell of a lot of interpretation as to what actually happens in the rest of the movie. And given that we see something that then turns out not to have happened, I very much watched with a view to how other characters in the film would react to her. Is there a reading of this film whereby what we see physically happening to her isn't actually happening to her? And it is possible to view this film and think that what we see her body becoming is just a literal interpretation of what's happening to her inside. It could be argued that she is rotting, that this is actually happening, or the reactions of the people that come and visit her. It could very well be argued that it's not happening to her at all. That may just be me reading slightly too much into it. I happen to like that reading. It may also be that the script is lacking in that department, and that the actors playing the visitors are lacking in the reactions that they have to her. But their reactions are so muted to what is, by the end of the film, is essentially a walking, rotting corpse, that I have to believe on some level that the director intended that. Either that, or he had so little money that he was only able to do 1 or 2 takes and they weren't able to give him the kind of reaction that he wanted, and he just had to put that in the film. There's arguments to be made for both of those. If you've decided that you're going to hate the film, you'll go with the micro budget, the actors are shit. If you decide that you love the film, you'll possibly go with my reading of it. There are sound arguments to be made for both, I think. I actually think we could have done with maybe 1, at a push 2 less dream sequences. One is very telling, and it speaks to the relationship between her and her boyfriend, who's an oaf and potentially an abusive boyfriend, and her another friend of hers, possibly an ex-boyfriend, who essentially just still wants to have sex with her. I really liked that. It told us a lot about these characters that weren't giving much away about themselves. The other 2 less so, and I think in those sections of the film the criticism levelled against it, that it's too artsy, is fair. I think that this is a work from a guy who I would imagine has come out of film school and has managed to get the backing for his first movie. So he's perhaps trying to put too much flair into it, if you like, trying to show off. You have to bear in mind the film is probably also a calling card for him as well. It could have done with a little restraint in that area. Some people will say that the camera work is too artsy. I happen to think that it fits the feel of the movie wonderfully. The focus isn't tight. The focus of the camera is fixed through an awful lot of the movie, meaning that if the character that the camera's focusing on is moving backwards and forwards in relation to the camera, he or she, and it's usually Lucy, the main character, will come into focus and then back out of focus, and the camera won't follow her and maintain focus on her. It will maintain focus on this point that she's coming in and out of. For me, I think that gives the film a lovely woozy quality. It also means that you can't, in some scenes, always instantly see what stage her decay is at until she woozily, almost dreamlike, comes into focus, and then you can see the detail, and it's repulsed, and then she's back out, slightly out of focus again. I actually loved that aspect of the film. If I'm going to be hypercritical, there are title cards. There are 3 title cards, I guess, to introduce the 3 acts of the movie. They look very reminiscent of the title cards used by Lars von Trier in Antichrist. They tell us nothing about the section of each movie that we're going to watch, and they could have been dropped completely. They serve very, very little purpose, if any at all. I don't think I'm too dense to get it. I think we could have done without it. In the final analysis, the special effects work, which an awful lot of this film will hinge on, is superb. There will be moments where your mouth will be agape, where you don't know whether to stare or look away. It also hinges on the central performance of our main actress. I'm going to have to name her. There's so many names here. I'm going to assume she's the first name, Caden Rose. If that's not correct, I'll pop her name up as a title underneath my pasty white face. And whilst it's true that with the stable of actors that you're working with on your first film and a micro budget are not going to be professional actors, and I can understand that some people will be frustrated with her performance, there are worse performances in this. Luckily, those parts are very small. I actually think that because her character is so devoid internally, that what she does with the role is more or less exactly what's needed from the role. I suspect a more accomplished actor could bring out many more nuances, but it doesn't, for me, detract from the enjoyment of the movie at all. It's got a story it wants to tell, it's got a theme it wants to explore, and it mines that for all it's worth, unflinchingly, to the inevitable end of this movie. Some people will think the very final shots are a little out there. Trust me, if you've got to that point in the film, you will go with it. That won't turn you off it and spoil the film. You will have decided a long time ago that that the film's not for you. If you're going to try it out, I strongly urge you to get through the first 30 or 40 minutes. That build-up is vital. If you think that nothing's happening, give it another 10 or 15 minutes, because you can't just go straight into the maggots. You have to earn it. I think the film earns it. I think it's a very powerful piece of work. It's obviously made within the constraints, the contextual constraints of its creation, but what you see within those constraints of budget, location and actors, I was very impressed with. I'm not sure I would sit down and watch this with friends. They might not thank me. But if you love horror movies, and if you're sick and tired of toothless vampires and direct-to-video werewolf movies that are shoddy CGI werewolves, or the umpteenth killer in a mask, or haunted house movies that consist of shots from security cameras and 60-70 minutes of doors opening and closing on their own, or films that are quiet, 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 bang, quiet, 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 bang. If you're after something a little different, that's going to test you and challenge you and ask you to engage with it, I would definitely check this one out. If you hate it, remember that I warned you at the start you might hate it. but you might just love it, because I've seen nothing quite like it, and I'm very, very interested to see what, I'm going to give his name another go, what Eric Falado comes up with next.